On August 31, 2025, the tranquil waters of the South China Sea exploded into conflict, and don't miss the end in this video. The U.S. destroyer USS Higgins, a 9,000-ton steel behemoth designed to rule the waves, was on a routine freedom of navigation operation off Scarborough Shoal, a deliberate signal from Washington that no country could own the world's busiest sea lanes. But Beijing had something else in mind. Emerging from the fog, Chinese warships Type 052D destroyers and Type 054A frigates raced in, cutting the waves like predators stalking their quarry. In a matter of minutes, they were within 500 yards, issuing icy threats. U.S. warship you are in Chinese waters. Leave immediately or face consequences. It was no patrol. It was a demonstration of power. Some ships even crossed Higgins's bow at menacing angles, tempting catastrophe. Aboard, American naval crew members breathed their breaths, clinging to steel rails as control kept their fingers away from the trigger. Not a single missile was readied, not a gun raised. The humiliation was bitter, America's most commanding war. Vessels subjected to irresponsible harassment, yet unable to retaliate. But this was the edge of a razor that modern warfare walked. Power defined not so much in firepower, but in restraint. One miscalculation could light a world on fire. At that tense juncture, Scarborough Shoal, a mere scattering of reefs and rocks, became the theater of superpower conflict where pride, power, and law clashed. And while seconds ticked like hours, the question hung in the air. If you were the USS Higgins, commander, would you fire on the Chinese vessel, got the Chinese vessels bore down, completing tight circles around the USS Higgins with deadly accuracy, until one frigate sliced across its bow at little more than 300 yards, a beat's width at sea. A collision between giants of steel that magnitude might bust hulls, set fires, and take hundreds of lives in a matter of minutes. And the Chinese commanders knew it. That was their game. But on Higgins's bridge, level heads delivered firm orders. Hold course. Keep her speed. Discipline was unbreakable, but the tension on the deck was intolerable. Sailors clutched the rails until their knuckles turned white. Aware of the arsenal under their feet, 96 vertical launch tubes able to unleash tomahawks, harpoons, or SM-2 interceptors within a minute and a half. In one command, Higgins could convert every hostile contact into mangled scrap on the ocean floor. But that self-control counted. To fire in wrath would not merely sink enemy ships, it might lead to superpowers, each encompassing almost 2 billion people. And yet the provocation hurt. To be serving on one of America's finest destroyers, almost $2 billion worth of steel prowess, and be harassed by ships half its capacity was itself an indignity. Each Chinese splash from a wake, each radio insult, was an affront to their task, their flag, and their nation. But even in quiet, Higgins's real power shone. Its SPY-1D radar monitored more than 200 contacts simultaneously, designating every ship, every fishing vessel, every aircraft overhead. Its failing CIWs could fire 45,000 rounds per minute, a steel wall against any approaching threat. This was not weakness, it was mastery. And while the world witnessed an American destroyer standing firm under pressure, those on board were aware of bitter reality. Patience wears thin, and when crossed, the retribution would shake the seas themselves. For Beijing's leaders, the risks were obvious. Their Type 052D destroyers were packed with YJ-18 supersonic anti-ship missiles, which could slice through a carrier's deck from almost 300 miles out. And Type 054 frigates provided dozens of additional launch tubes to project power in multiples. But even with this firepower, they knew the reality. They were tailing a ship connected directly to the U.S. Navy's Aegis network, supported by satellites above and submarines waiting in ambush below. In an actual battle, the Chinese flotilla would be nothing but smoldering wrecks within less than 15 minutes. But Beijing's play was never about victory on the battlefield. It was POP theater, a show to display defiance for the world to see. And as the USS Higgins remained steadfast in silence, its strength gauged by restraint, another drama was played out in the vicinity, one very much more tragic. More than 40 Filipino fishing vessels, tenuous wooden lifelines for whole coastal communities, attempted to bring in their morning catch at Scarborough Shoal. Instead, they encountered China's wrath. Coast Guard cutters and militia ships swooped in, sirens blaring, hulls ramming, and water cannons powerful enough to shatter windows and tear nets to bits. 50-foot boats were thrown around like toys by steel giants that tipped the scales at thousands of tons. Fishermen cried as radios spat out abuses. Trespassers, dirty intruders, humbled in waters the international courts had already proclaimed belonged to the Philippines. By midday, a dozen boats had been sent back, their catch lost, their livelihoods destroyed. From Higgins' deck, American sailors watched the spray on the horizon, unable to act, still and restrained. The contradiction was excruciating, the superpower's warship under harassment, while Allies fishermen being beaten like insects. And for what? A scattering of reefs and rocks that conceals the real treasure. Domination of the South China Sea, the arteries of world trade. $3.5 trillion worth of goods and 15 million barrels of oil flow through its waters every year. If China can secure its supremacy here, the ramifications will spread far beyond the Pacific, reshaping economies, alliances, and the balance of global power itself. Picture Beijing with the ability to hold up, reroute, or even strangle shipments along one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. It is no longer a question of fishing rights or reef rocks. It is economic warfare without bullets. The power to strangle nations through domination of the flow of oil and commerce. For America, the stakes are never higher. If a treaty ally, such as the Philippines, is left to stand alone against rammings and water cannons, on what confidence will Japan or South Korea rely on Washington's word? Each confrontation at Scarborough Shoal is televised by Chinese state media as evidence of defiance, eroding faith in U.S. resolve. But the deployment of the USS Higgins also communicated another message. The United States is still there, still present, still willing to insert steel in the water to uphold the principle that no country controls the world's sea lanes. Scarborough is no longer simply about reefs. It's about two futures, one governed by international law and one governed by sheer force of arms. The standoff ended without a single bullet being fired, but that silence was heavier than any missile. For hours, American servicemen were subjected to irresponsible provocation, Chinese warships creeping closer, taunts popping over the radio, Filipino fishermen scattered like game, yet they stood firm. This is the power paradox of the 21st century. America possesses the greatest navy the world has ever known. And yet to win is not to measure it in explosions, but in restraint, patience, and defense of friends when law is defied. Scarborough has been transformed into a symbol of that choice, of a world of free trade and common security, or one in which intimidation determines all. That morning in August was a brutal reality check. Peace is tenuous, and it only lasts when the forces powerful enough to defend it refuse to turn their heads. And if you think the world is worth the story behind these showdowns, be sure to subscribe, because the next confrontation might be sooner than anybody can anticipate.